The NAACP is the tale of the three Bens: Benjamin Hooks, Benjamin Chavis, and Ben Jealous. We've crossed paths so many times. I remember when we first saw each other, you were a young organizer in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you were our hero.
Yes, well, thank you. In fact, we had the largest march in Jackson, Mississippi, due to his organizing to save HBCUs in 1993 or 1994.
Yep.
And it rained that day. We kept marching in the rain. The largest protest in Jackson, Mississippi history.
Well, and I don't know if they briefed you when you were coming in, but the movie Ghosts of Mississippi, that was the time that Byron De La Beckwith was on trial for killing Medgar Evers, and the Klan had put out a press release. Now, I didn't know those brothers could actually type and organize themselves, but they put out a press release saying that they were going to kill one of the leaders of the march.
Yes.
And you were coming in.
Yes.
So we had FBI snipers along the rooftops the entire route because the Klan was angry that De La Beckwith was being prosecuted. Yes. They were angry to see the largest march of black folks in decades. And they were angry you were coming to town.
Well, thank you. So as God will have it, I tell brothers and sisters all the time, be careful what you pray for, because God will answer our prayers. I went from the NAACP, now head of the NNPA, which he used to head.
Yeah, right. And I did the opposite.
Now he's over one of the largest environmental groups in the world, the Sierra Club.
Which is also part of your legacy, because one of the things we do at Sierra Club is we are good allies to frontline environmental justice activists across the country. The environmental justice movement really rides on the rails of the environmental racism movement that you built back in the 80s.
Yes.
You and I couldn't get away from each other if we wanted to.
I know, man, I know. So, fast forward to today. We're here at the Democratic National Convention 2024 in Chicago, Illinois. Then I was here in 1968.
Ooh. When, you and Julian Bond.
Yes, there was another mayor, Mayor Daley, but we got an African-American mayor today.
Yes.
And one of the things about this convention today is this diversity. We didn't have any media booths in 1968, and we certainly did not have a black woman candidate for the president of the United States of America. So we've made progress. And I tell people all the time, sometimes we underestimate or understate our progress. However, it is because we've made progress, we got to keep pushing.
Yes, sir.
And because at one point, the civil rights movement was over here, the environmental movement was over here. It was people of color that brought the movements together.
Yes.
We had the first People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. in 1991. I coined the term of environmental racism in 1982. In Warren County, North Carolina. But the thing I'm bringing it fast forward, I'm going to let Ben talk to us about what's happening with the Sierra Club. Martin Luther King said it best. The threat to justice anywhere, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Amen.
And so when Dr. King spoke out against the Vietnam War, people said, what does that have to do with civil rights? When I first raised the question of environment, some of my colleagues in civil rights said, man, that's the environmental movement. That has nothing to do with civil rights. But now we know it has everything to do with civil rights. It has everything to do with human rights. So tell us, man, you've led some major organizations in our nation. You're now over one of the world's largest environmental and climate justice organizations. How is it at the Sierra Club?
I'm so proud of what we're doing at the Sierra Club. We will next year celebrate having prevented 1 million asthma attacks and 100,000 heart attacks because we've shut down 385 coal-fired power plants. Yeah. And the only question is, do they put the coal-fired power plant next to the people of color or the poor white folk? That's the only question, right? So it is disproportionately our communities, and it's always, working class and poor communities who bear the brunt of those heart attacks, bear the brunt of those asthma attacks. And that's part of what we're doing at Sierra Club is to really draw the whole circle and make sure people understand that, for example, when we go to Phoenix And because we succeeded in helping pass the Inflation Reduction Act, $1.5 billion for urban trees, right?
Yes.
And we're planting trees in Phoenix. And this young sister, 18 years old, interning with the Sierra Club, says, you know what? So these new trees are going to mean that my little brother, my little sister can play in this park in the daytime because it gets to 120 degrees.
I know.
But a tree will drop the temperature 20 degrees.
I know. I just did a study about the lowering of the temperature because, the asphalt and the concrete gets high.
Yeah.
But if you got a lot of trees, it shelters the sunlight from that.
Yes.
It's just like having an oven.
And the interesting thing is that literally makes the neighborhood safer because when there's more trees, people come out in the street and they hang out in the shade, and that discourages crime.
So, being out there, I'm smiling because in the black community back in the day, we used to call the environmentalists tree huggers.
Yes.
But now we're tree planters.
Yes.
We have to plant the seeds today for the future of tomorrow.
Well, and the interesting thing, I did a little research on the phrase tree hugger. And the phrase tree hugger it first comes into language in Hindi. It means clinger. It describes these women who would hug trees around their villages and keep industry from cutting them down. And so, if you will, colonists and industry turned it into a bad word. But it was really about women of color saying, this is our community. We are all connected. The animals need the trees. We need the trees. So we're going to put our body in the way of the saws.
Well, again, communities of color, we always flip the script. We always take some text or some words or some phrases that have been used to disparage us, and we flip the script to talk about how this can empower, how this can engage in the liberation.
Well, I'm going to send you a tree hugger hat and a whole bunch made.
All right, I'll be glad to wear it. And right now, I come from an agricultural farming area in my hometown, North Carolina. I'm pleased to tell you that I'm going to retire in North Carolina. I just planted 1,000 trees in my home, on my own land, and we're going to do a truffle farm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, truffles grow under pine trees.
Yes.
Yes.
So, one thing.
I'm not going to be a tree hugger or a tree lover. I'm a tree entrepreneur.
Well, then I'm going to see a few tree hugger hats with families.
Absolutely.
But, the history of black agriculture,
yes,
the history of the Back to the Land movement,
yes,
is also the history of black environmentalists.
Exactly.
If you sit with Shirley Sherrod, she will tell you that when she and Reverend Sherrod were helping to build the Federation of Southern Cooperatives,
yes,
they were also at the very forefront of sustainable agriculture. They were doing things, remind me the name of the vines, like mung vines, there's a name for those vines that they used to make wine,
yes,
down south. But again, you don't need to use pesticides and all those things. When you talk about George Washington Carver, clear environmentalist, real
Great
focus
time
on soil quality, right? Actually farming in a sustainable, way. And
I'm glad you mentioned farms. I'm going to give a shout out to the Biden-Harris administration. $2 billion was just distributed to black farmers. After all these decades, Sister Sherrod is also involved in helping to challenge the Department of Agriculture. So I'm hoping that, and of course, $2 billion spread out for many farmers. It's a little money, but it's better than nothing. And we're hoping that people can replant, retail, and revitalize black farmers in America. But the Southern Cooperative was always that place, not on policy development, but it was developing activists around environment, activists around farming, activists now around climate. And I think some of the major environmental groups, that's why it's so important for you to be at the Sierra Club, because there was friction when we first started. Some of the environmental groups thought that integrating the environmental movement would lessen. But the truth of the matter is, we work together, we're stronger.
No, that's right. But there is a missing piece, because if we're honest, the mainstream environmental groups, the leaders tend to be people who can afford a Prius or better.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? The environmental justice movement tends to be mostly working class black and brown folks. But we got 16 million, you got 8 million blacks in poverty, you got 16 million whites in poverty, you got about 60 million whites who are basically economically, marginalized, and nobody really is focused on organizing them in this movement.
Right.
And a lot of times, they live right next door to the black folks who are being poisoned. They're being poisoned in the same way.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to working with you on, is we got to finish that circle.
So I teach a course at Duke University on environmental justice. And I shock all my students at the first lecture. I say, I want to clear something up. There's only one race. That's the human race.
No, amen.
And people say, what? You mean to tell me we're all related? I said, DNA says, study of the genotype from the first,
Human Genome Project.
that we're all from African descent. If we want to be truthful about it.
I got a white dad, I got a black mom. Right? I get their DNA.
Hey.
Here's the joke. Okay. First of all, if you go back about 50,000 years,
Yes.
both families were in the Nile River Valley. All right. The ones who became Europeans.
Not really violent in Africa.
Yes. Right. It's in southern Africa.
Yes.
Well, the ones who went up. My dad is like L1, mom's L1B. These are early genetic codes.
Yes.
They're about 50 miles apart in the Nile River Valley.
Yes.
The ones who are closest to the river went up the river into Asia, came over into Europe, they became European. The ones who are a little bit to the west took tributaries up to West Africa.
Yes.
But here's the funny thing, right? Because of what happened on the plantations in Virginia and North Carolina,
Absolutely.
you don't have to go back 50,000 years, my parents. You only got to go back actually about 400 or 500 years, because the sons that came over from royal families to start Massachusetts and Virginia were in the same families. They're the fourth, fifth sons who didn't have any land. So my parents, my black mom and white dad, are cousins 500 years ago in Europe. They're cousins 50,000 years ago in Africa. The joke's on us when we try to act like there's some big wall.
But now you're on the threshold of what a major divide is in America. Racism, anti-Semitism, Islamic phobia, hate,
Homophobia,
all this
sexism,
divisiveness. And I think one of the things that's
classism.
encouraging about this Democratic convention, I think the Democrats have an opportunity not only to move forward politically, but I think the sociology of America needs to be recast, redefined. We need to change this narrative. There's something that undergirds all Americans. And the truth of the matter is, every inch of progress that black people have made has inured benefit to all Americans. Voting rights is for all Americans.
Amen.
Fair housing rights is for all Americans. Civil rights is for all Americans. And so I think we got to recapture what I see here at the DNC is not only the hope and the joy, but we got to roll up our sleeves and do some work.
No, 100%.
That we got to take this enthusiasm here in Chicago
and convert it into work.
Get back to our counties and cities, farms, our villages, and make sure that we have massive voter participation, massive civic engagement between now and November.
Well, it's funny, man. When we first met, you were an old organizer. I was a young organizer.
Yes.
You were our hero, the former political prisoner, all of that, the head of the NAACP. So now sitting here as two old organizers, right? In the tradition of Joseph Lowery and others, just didn't stop.
Yes.
We have to be honest that as much enthusiasm as we have, all it means really is that we have a chance to win.
That's right.
We cannot allow ourselves to forget that Joe Biden became president because of about 50,000 votes in 3 states, like about, I think, a margin of 30,000 in 1 state and 10,000 in 2 other states. And so, Kamala could become president just like Joe, but it will be a fight to the end. One of the things that we neglect to understand, again, going back to the math of poverty, the Democratic Party folks will talk about, low information voters, what they call them, like unlikely voters. And what they're really talking about is like low-income black and brown folks. Well, there are even more low-income white folks. And right now, the parties are pretty segregated. Most of the black and brown folks are Democrats. Most of the poor white folks are Republicans. And Trump is a master at turning them out. Those folks, they don't turn out for all Republican candidates. They don't turn out for ones who seem corporate. John McCain. They don't turn out for Mitt Romney. Why? Mitt Romney looks like the guy who shut down your factory because he was the guy who shut down your factory. But they do turn out, I kid you not, for B-rate TV stars, B-rate movie stars, Jesse the Body Ventura, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump. They turn out for those people because they feel like they know him, they want to have a beer with him, that's their guy. And you can't poll those folks.
Right.
And so you got to fight in this election like they have a deep well that no pollster can see because that's how Donald Trump won the last time.
Well, he plays to the base. And the base is not about what we do as all Americans. Fear. Donald Trump strokes the fear of whites.
Yes.
He strokes the fear of extremists. That's why when you had a situation at Charlottesville, he said, oh, there are good people on both sides. On January the 6th, he's now trying to flip that script to say these were tourists who just wandered up into the Capitol. And so one of the things about the situation we have today, and I think the environmentalists can be very helpful, is that we need more truth.
Yes.
We need more facts. We need more science.
Yes.
Because also there's an anti-science syndrome going on. They don't believe in climate change. They don't believe in the erosion of the shores, the rise of the ocean. And all these things can be very devastating. We already now have more tornadoes, more hurricanes, more devastations, more wildfires than ever before. But, you know, when you're anti-science, you basically say, well, that's just an act of God, rather than an act of men not taking care of and women not taking care of the environment and healing the planet. The good news is, I'm pretty sure you saw, there are studies that show in those areas that have actually reduced carbon, those areas that actually reduce emissions of methane, there are parts of the ozone layer that is coming back. So there's no question we can be on the right trajectory to ensure a future for the whole world population. But it's going to take courage. It's going to take determination. But I agree with you that the grassroots movement at the end of the day has much more power than the public policy makers in Washington.
Amen.
So that grassroots, and that's what excites me about you being over the Sierra Club. We're looking forward to that. Getting some brothers and sisters in South Central Los Angeles, South Chicago, Harlem.
Well, I mean, that's what's so important. I mean, you know
what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, no, it's real. I mean, look, Stacey Abrams, Derek Johnson runs NAACP now. Me, we were all young. We were all teenagers when you took over NAACP.
Yes.
You spent your first week
That's right.
in public housing project in South Central
Los Angeles.
a murder factory, a place where unfortunately our babies were being sacrificed and our elders were often being hit by stray bullets. And you signaled right away what was being said in places like Harlem where I was organizing. I was 17 years old. But you know, the rich side of the family wasn't hearing, which was that the 48% of black folks who were in poverty when Dr. King was assassinated were still in poverty. In fact, when Obama was elected, the 48% of black folks were in poverty. 40 years later, and you essentially said, look, this will no longer be the National Association for the Advancement of Certain People.
That's right.
We will be the NAACP. We will stand for all black people and honestly for all people who deserve more justice, more fairness in this country. And you signaled honestly to the black bourgeoisie, right, to the black overclass, that the black underclass was still part of our family.
That's right.
And we had to fight like family, and we had to come together. It really transformed all of us as leaders because we felt like, you know what, we don't have to sort of like avoid dealing with the legacy institutions in our community.
Right.
We got to just take the power and go make them serve the whole community. So look, thank you for that.
So look, Chief, before we go, I asked you this question on the Chavis Fund, so I'm going to ask it here for the NPA. 2024, what gives you your greatest hope for the future?
You know, my greatest hope for the future, at the end of the day, is the progress that we continue to make. And sometimes we don't take a moment to celebrate. In the environmental movement, that's the fact that when Bill McKibben wrote the first book on climate change, he said by 2030 we are on track to to increase Earth's temperature by 4 degrees, which literally translates to hell breaking loose. You think the superstorms are bad now? We're at about like 1.3, 1.4. You can go 3 times higher. It's exponentially worse. Well, right now, we know we can keep it under 2 degrees. We might be able to keep it under 1.5 degrees. What does that mean? That half of what we need to do to stabilize the climate, we've already done. And similarly, you look at how people talked about Kamala 2 months ago. 3 months ago. Oh, it's impossible. Oh no. Oh shit. Sister is endorsed by Joe Biden, and like within a day the money's pouring in, the volunteers, and every 3 days she picks up a new battleground state. Right? And so look, when we have that much power in our community, that much talent, right? When we as activists can make that much change on the planet, we got this. We just got to be organized. So please join the NAACP, join Sierra Club. You don't want to join something, because the fight, as we know, is always between organized money and organized people.
Well, look,
we can win if we're organized.
I want to say on the record that the NNPA is going to work with you and the Sierra Club. We want to help you get your messaging out. We want to help increase the engagement in the constituencies that we represent all of the United States. It's one struggle, man.
Love you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Love you.
you.
Take care.